Hey, so I had said that I was going to make a mental training video on how I had mentally prepared for my 283rd fight, which I had this past Friday. So that's what I'm going to do here. This is not exhaustive, so this is not like all the different kinds of mental training that you can do. It's not going to be able to focus on every point of things that people may need to focus on in their own mental training. So I'm really just going to give the kind of template of what I did. I think that there's a tendency of people wanting to be very secretive of their mental training. And I understand this because it's incredibly personal. Like the things that you say to yourself, the things that you struggle with, the things that you might need to work on are very, very personal. And so it feels like you're kind of exposing yourself, talking about the particular things that you think about or need to focus on for yourself. But there's also what you say to yourself or what you particularly do or any of the things that you necessarily use for yourself might not track perfectly for other people. And so that's basically the disclaimer is this is just an example. It's this, people have gotten really into this what I eat in a day thing, and what your nutritional needs are, your energy output, your deficiencies, your strengths, all these different things are very, very personal. And so what The Rock eats in a day versus what I eat in a day is going to be absolutely nothing similar to each other, but it's just a template. It's just a way to look at it. And I think that it's helpful for people to see literally what is being said when you say do these things, or when you're you need to affirm yourself, is what actually is an affirmation that people use. So take what I used or what I did as a complete template when you download an app and then you put your own things into it. It needs to be highly individual to you because it's your mind, it's your mental training, but this is just ideas that you can start from. So in general, you want to be doing mental training all the time. I've done previous mental training videos where I talk about how it's like cardio. You can't cram cardio. You can't increase your cardio in a very short amount of time and expect it to kind of have the effect that you want it to have. It's something that you need to be consistently doing, and you kind of have a maintenance of it. So you want to be having a maintenance of your mental training so that you can access it when you want to be accessing it for your performance. Something that I was thinking about before this fight that I thought was maybe something I've known for a really long time, but not something that I appreciate really, is that there can't be a huge difference between how you train and how you fight mentally. The things that you do on kind of a daily basis with your training, or any of these things that you're doing to get through your process, which is all the time, is going to have to be really similar to what you do when you actually go to perform, because you do that very, very infrequently compared to how much you're training. So if you're oh, when it's go time, I do this one thing, you've only done that one thing 4 times, 5 times, something like that. So you really want it to be something that you do much more frequently. And then when it's time to go perform, you want it to be very similar to the way that you train, 1, so that you have all of that experience to back yourself up, but 2, because you don't want to put so much pressure on the performance itself that you end up getting into a headspace that you're there's a lot of significance and meaning and, I don't know, importance to that one event. It's actually part of your whole thing. And I think that what benefited me for a really long time before I even got focused on mental training was that I was fighting so much that for me, training and fighting went together. Fighting was part of training and training is part of fighting. So they just kind of are enmeshed. And I think for a lot of people who don't have that much fight opportunity, they can't fight as often as I was fighting or as much as they even might want to. Those get separated too much. So it becomes the performance and then the training, and the performance is a test for how much your training has been working or something like that. So you really want them to be a little bit closer together. So all that said, when I was going into this fight, this is karchuk. So this means that there's no gloves. You just wrap your hands with ropes. And there's also no points. So you either win or lose by knockout. Otherwise it's a draw. So this to me is actually really helpful. I really like the karchuk rule set where there's no points because a lot of the things that I struggle with when I'm actually fighting have to do with knowing that I'm being scored on, or whether I'm scoring with what I'm doing and this kind of thing. So if there's no points, this is something that I don't really have to worry about mentally. So it just takes like a load out of my brain of something that I would be kind of concerned about and don't have to be concerned about. But the thing that I do worry about in doing karchuk is that you can get hurt. When you're wearing small gloves or no gloves, even getting hit once in the face has a much bigger impact than being hit with gloves. I know this from experience. The only times I've ever like seen double or kind of been like, wow, that was really like I have to like pull myself together is in karchuk fights. I've not really had that kind of impact from gloved punches, even though I've been hit very, very hard with gloved punches as well. So I had a little bit of fear going into this fight, but normal fear. Like I've fought karchuk now, I think this was my 17th time, so I have a lot of experience in it. But because of that experience, I know what that kind of being rocked or the weaknesses I have in my guard, what the consequences of those might be in a karchuk fight versus in a normal Muay Thai fight. So I was kind of like getting into a headspace leading into the fight, which is very normal for me for any fight, is that I suddenly feel like all of my training is like really significant. So like any of the struggles I'm having in training, any of the difficulty I'm having in training, all of a sudden they become really universal about myself, which is like I suck at blocking, or like I don't close distance well, or I can't block my face, or any of these things. And I knew that that was something that I have a problem with, and so that's something that I wanted to address before getting into the fight, because I didn't want to take that with me into the fight. But I also have a couple of injuries, like long-standing kind of haven't gone away, and I'm definitely going to be taking with me into the fight kind of thing. And so just kind of like getting my head around the acceptance that that's going to be coming into the ring with me, and how significant I want that to be in how I'm dealing with it within the fight. So I was listening to a audiobook, which I had used previously before my WBC title fight, which was more than a year ago in February. And this is about confidence. And so a lot of the things that I got from that had to do with kind of setting your mind into a certain groove and then just trying to kind of like keep it there. And something that I listened to this one chapter that was about kind of like building your confidence and keeping your confidence. And something that I was kind of laughing about at breakfast with Kevin is that I'd been in like a pretty bad, not terrible, but like a pretty bad mental state, not the kind of place you would want to be in for fighting. And then I listened to this chapter, and all of a sudden I was in like a really good state. And I was laughing because I was like, you literally can just think different thoughts and I'll still believe them. Like I believe all the bad thoughts about myself, but I also believed the good thoughts that I was having about myself. And it's not like a replacement positivity thing. What I thought was so funny about it is it's like you're eating shit, like you're eating junk food, you're eating stuff that makes you feel bad and isn't good for you and makes it hard for you to do your work. But if you just put a plate of good food in front of you, you will eat that. It's not a struggle to eat it. You don't have to force yourself to eat it. You actually like it. It's like, oh, I actually do like this like steak and carrots also. But you just don't put it in front of yourself. So I was laughing because it's like I put this junk mental stuff in front of myself all the time because it's like my habit, it's like my tendency, but it's not a struggle to put the positive ones there. So I just need to like put the better plate of food, mental food, in front of myself more often, and I will eat it and I will enjoy it and I will actually ingest it. Like I actually do believe those things that I was working and thinking. So like these thoughts bad for me, these thoughts good for me, and I can totally just put a different plate in front of me and accept it. There's a difficulty in that when you try to replace negative thoughts with positive thoughts, when you just try to replace them, you don't believe those positive thoughts. So that can be really hard. In that case, I tend to try to go to something neutral, something that I know is absolutely true, and so I'll absolutely believe it, as opposed to like, I'm the best, no one can beat me, that kind of thing, because I don't believe that. But like, I have done this before, I have these accomplishments, I know those things, I believe those things, so I can put those in place of doomsday thoughts or whatever is there. So literally what I did, we had to travel for this fight. We had to drive about 6 hours north into Kampang Pet. And I had written down these like 3 steps that were from this chapter in this book. So this is like my little piece of paper that I brought with me, and these are literally just the 3 steps. So it's like making your own worksheet without filling it out. So step 1 is to take mental inventory of abilities, achievements, improvements, both short-term and long-term. Step 2 is to take stock of the situation. The author has the what, who, and where. So what is your task, and what is the task within the task? Who are the cast of important characters within your performance? What's important? So this is going to be you. It's going to be your opponent. It might be people who are also there. If your parents are going to be there, your coach, this might necessarily be something like, I have a problem with this one trainer who I thought my opponent might come with him because she's sometimes associated with his gym. And it's hard for me when he's at these fights, so I had to prepare for that. And then the third thing is understanding that you are good enough right now, as is, to do what it is that you need to do. There's no like, I'm on my way to becoming good, I'm almost there. Like, if I had done this, I would be ready for this. Like, you are ready right now. You've done the work. All the work is done. Now it's time to go and do the thing. This is something that Andy Thompson, who was my mentor and coach when I first got to Thailand at Lana Muay Thai, he was always like, the work is already done. Now it's time to go. And so I luckily had that understanding from very, very early on in my Muay Thai career. So that's the worksheet, just these 3 things. And so I took this, and then I took something to write with and a book that I could write in. You could literally just bring like a scrap of paper as long as it's big enough for you to do all of your work on, and a pen. I do believe that you need to write this with your hand as opposed to typing it into your phone. There's all kinds of studies on how writing with your actual hand has very different effects and impacts in your own mind than like typing something. So when you're doing your mental training, you really want to have a journal and you want to write it with like your actual hand as opposed to typing it into something. If that's not possible, if you need to be taking some kind of like mental notes after training, you can have a program or whatever, like an app, and like put it into your phone as like a reference point. But I highly, highly encourage people to, even if you use that method, to when you get home, take what you've written from your phone and like actually write it out with your hand. So we drove up on Thursday night. So like we arrived late on Thursday night, maybe like 9:30 p.m. we arrived at our hotel. And then we had the whole day, because I fought at like, the show started at 5 p.m., but I had to be at the venue at 3 p.m. for like walkthroughs and that kind of thing. So we had until 3 p.m. And Kevin and I wake up at like 6, 7 in the morning, that kind of thing. So it was a long day that I had in front of the fight. And I used that time I kind of like tried to time when I would do that worksheet, because you don't want to peak too early. You don't want to like get yourself into a great spot early and then have lots of time to kind of like let your mind go back into the grooves that you're used to, unless you want to do the worksheet a couple of times. I did the worksheet after breakfast, so probably at about like 10 or 11 before I took a nap. And then I read it again. So I read what I had written at about, I don't know, 4 or something. So like pretty soon before my fight, just to like reaffirm all of these things. So when I was taking mental inventory of my abilities, achievements, improvements, both short and long term. So I write down that I have 282 fights. So I have all this experience. I have more than 15 Karchuk fights, which is the format that I was going to be fighting in. I didn't know how many it was. I think this is 17. So I knew it was more than 15. I've been training Muay Thai for 16 years. I have 4 years sparring every single day with Yod Kun Pan. I have fantastic defense when I get out of my own way mentally, and under pressure, my hands are very powerful and accurate. My elbows have great timing. I wear everyone down. I know this from my training. And I have over 90 KOs to my name at my weight against bigger opponents. This was relevant to what I was thinking about because it's KO or nothing in Karchuk. So thinking about KO, I know my opponent is trying to KO me. I'm going to try to KO my opponent because nobody really super wants a draw in that situation. Something that I was kind of not surprised by, but it was like, oh wow, this is actually like a really interesting turn moment, was when I was writing down all this experience that I have with 282 fights. My first thought, this is the crap food in front of me, is that because I have so much experience, I feel like there's this really, really high risk of humiliation in not doing well. It's like I have all this experience, so why am I still so shitty? Or like, why do I struggle? Or how can I, if I perform badly with all this experience, this is just like a really embarrassing thing to have happen. And this is a little bit of like maybe people who suffer from imposter syndrome or something like this. But the other thought, the nice plate of food that went right next to that is like, with all of this experience, there's really not a lot that I haven't dealt with before. And after the fight, I kind of came back to this thought, which is that it's not that I don't experience new things anymore. I experience new things all the time. Things come at me that I was not anticipating, that I've never experienced before, that like I really had no idea this was going to happen. And it's not that I've experienced everything and so there's like nothing new anymore. It's that I've experienced new so much that no matter what new thing gets thrown at me, I've had experience, like I've been around the block dealing with new things many, many, many times. So instead of my experience working against me, because it might be really humiliating to lose a fight, my experience is working for me because I have so much experience doing this. I know how all of this stuff works, and I believe in myself to be able to roll with it when it turns sideways or goes a way that I wasn't anticipating. The second part was taking stock of the situation. What is the task? My task was to go in and pressure and defend myself so that I can stay close. With my style, I'm an inside fighter, I'm a knee fighter. I need to stay really close to my opponent. Who are the important characters? Me, for sure. My opponent, who I can handle. I put that parenthetically, I can handle my opponent. The promoter, who in a positive way likes me. He likes how I fight. He likes putting me on his promotion. So this is a positive thing that the promoter is one of the main characters. And then the potentiality of seeing this manager character who I don't like that was in there. Where is at a local temporary stadium. So I was picturing, this is not at a huge stadium with like thousands of people. This is an outdoor stadium. This is kind of like a festival fight. It's just during the day. There will be a lot of people watching. There will be a lot of VIP and local officials and that kind of thing. It's broadcast on TV, which means that there's lots of viewers who I don't see, but I don't have to think about the viewers that I don't see. They're not there. And this is going to be in front of a crowd who I have always had positive experiences with crowds. Crowds seem to like the way that I fight. They're always very encouraging when I get out of the fight, win or lose. They're always like, that was great. So fighting in front of a crowd is a positive thing for me. And so I put that in there. And then in this book, they talk about the importance of rewriting affirmations. So anytime you have an affirmation, you want to write it 3 or more times. Writing it just once is fine, but like the repetition actually really puts it in your brain in a way that's very different. And so what I was writing was, here's my chance to do what I love. So instead of making the important part how I perform or what the result is or any of these things that are like it's a hit or miss kind of thing, it's just, this is when I get to do what I love, get out of my way. And all this training that I do, all the years I've been in Thailand, the reason I fight so much is because I love fighting. So I get to do that. This is when I get to go do the thing that I really love. And then I also reminded myself that this is one fight, in my case, of hundreds. So taking the significance out of it is helpful for a lot of people. It doesn't mean you want to downplay. It's not like this doesn't matter, or it's whatever the thing is, like all fights matter, they matter to you, losing always sucks, this kind of thing. But you want to downplay the like uniqueness of it or the individualness of it. And I did this also for my WBC world champion fight, which is, you know, a very unique experience and a very like impactful experience. Who gets to fight for a world title of that kind of caliber very often. So that was very unique, but I still, in that same case, was like, despite all of these things that make it really unique, it is just another fight. The way you win a world championship fight is the same way you win a festival fight. Like, you really just have to go do what you're good at and dominate your opponent and be better or good enough to win that fight in that one moment. You don't have to be perfect. You never have to be perfect. You just have to be good enough to win that fight with that person. And so this is one among, in my case, hundreds. And so the third one was like reminding yourself that you're good enough right now, that you've done all of the work. This is when it's really good to have done mental training all the time so that you can go look at your notes and how you've been talking to yourself positively from your training, the wins that you've had in training, the improvements that you've had in training. It's good to take inventory to remind yourself of that kind of thing if you've been doing your mental training, and you can kind of like take stock of that. If you haven't been doing it and you're starting from scratch, remind yourself to do that later, but try to think of things that you can think of right now to affirm to yourself that you're good enough right now. There's nothing you need to do first in order to be able to go achieve the task that you're going to face right here and now. So I just wrote, I am good enough right now with all the work that I've done and experience that I've gained to succeed at this task. And then I wrote 3 times as an affirmation, just be your best. So I have people who I love very much who encourage me, and they've sent me notes over the years when I'm getting ready to do a fight, and they have different ways of saying it, which is really sweet. So like my brother Shane says, do good, which is really good. My friend Robin says, do work, which is really nice. And Den, who was my trainer up in Chiang Mai for a number of years, he would say, do your best, as I was getting in the ring. And these are all great affirmations, and I love them, and I really appreciate all these people. But for me, I changed it because it's not about doing your best, it's about being your best. I don't want to do Muay Thai, I don't want to do a thing, because this becomes a kind of like achievement, accomplishment, performance kind of thing. Whereas being your best, like just go be all of the work that you've done, to me feels a lot more free, a lot more like just go embody all of this work that you've done. And so that helped me in this fight, was this idea of just go be what you are and what you do, and don't like think about it, don't try to like perform the kind of thing, just do the thing, and when you are that thing, that is the performance. So those are the things that I did getting ready for this fight. And those are literally the things that I wrote down. This is the template that you can use if you want to steal this exact thing. You can write those prompts for yourself. So as a reminder, those prompts are take mental inventory of your abilities, achievements, improvements, both short and long term. 2, take stock of the situation. So that's the what, who, and when of important characters. What is your task within the task? And you are good enough right now with all the work that you've done to succeed at this task. Just be your best. However you want to talk to yourself in that third form of like affirming yourself that you have done all of the work and you are already good enough right now to do exactly what it is that you want to do. And so this is also a reminder to me that I need to get back to doing my like daily mental training, so that I have that kind of, in the same way that I do my running, you know, like I do my run every day, and that's not so that that day is awesome. I actually don't love running home from the gym. I'm very tired. It's the last thing that I do, but that run is not for that day. That run is for the bank. It's like an investment for all of these things, and it's not one run. It's the run every day that makes it so that, you know, in the late rounds of my fight, when I'm wearing people down and I can have the confidence that I do wear everyone down, I can have that confidence because I wear people down in training, and that kind of thing. So it's an investment. It's not a like, oh, this isn't working because I don't feel good about myself every day. I don't feel good about myself every day. But in the same way, I was able to just be like, oh, I don't have to eat this plate of crap food. I can totally just put this plate of good food in front of myself, and I really like it. I could probably do that more often and benefit from it in great ways. But happily for me, I was able to benefit from it at the moment that I needed to, because I was going to be performing in a fight. And a reminder of what I said earlier in the video, which is that you do not want to have a completely different set of preparing for your fight than you do preparing for training and just kind of your daily work within Muay Thai, or how you're trying to improve and that kind of thing. You want to make it very similar, very streamlined, so that you have all of that experience on a daily basis that you can pull into your experience of fighting, because we fight way less often than we train, including myself with hundreds of fights. I've trained way more than I've ever fought, and this is true for everybody. So that's my mental training vlog. I hope you guys enjoy it, and I hope you get a lot out of it, and I hope it encourages you to do your own work and your own research, and I will write the name of the book that I was listening to in case you guys want to check that out. Hey, so I wanted to add a couple of things to this video. One of them is that in Dr. Nate Zinsser's book, he talks about rationalizing past mistakes or errors or weaknesses or something like that. So you can't completely clear from your mind experiences that you've had previously that are in your mind making you think, I'm not going to be able to handle this. Remember that time I got hit? I was talking about how in Karchuk, when you get hit with no glove, with just the rope wraps, even just one, I was getting like double vision and this kind of like, this was in my mind going back into another Karchuk fight, and you can't just clear that out of your mind and be like, oh, don't think about that. Like you really, it's that don't think about elephants thing where you don't want to tell your mind not to think about things. He doesn't talk about that element of it, but he does say that an important part of having a confident mind and understanding your own capabilities, and when taking stock of what your accomplishments and achievements and powers are, is rationalizing away things that you might think are going to be a problem. So, for example, if I'm worried about like when I got hit in the face, like, oh, what about that time I got hit right here and I like saw double vision, is like, well, I've had 17 Karchuk fights and that's really only happened once. So you rationalize why that happened that time, or that's not going to happen this time because I'm aware of it now and I can keep my guard up, or I've been put down once. I've been counted once in all of my fights. So I got this head kick from Nong Ying, and I got counted and I got up and I ended up winning the fight by KO. But it's one of these things where it's like, I have a fear in my head of that experience of being knocked down and counted and kind of almost being knocked out. I got badly concussed with Loma one time. These are things that are standout experiences in my career. They're unusual. They're not things that happen to me all the time. They're things that I remember because they're peak moments, bad moments in my fight that I'm like, okay, this happened because I was, not prepared for the head kick. I'm now prepared for head kicks to come all the time. This happened in training because my sparring partners know me really well, and so they can kind of know what my patterns are and come in against these things that I usually am very successful with. I'm going to be successful in it this time because this opponent doesn't know me, like this kind of thing. So rationalizing errors or weaknesses or any of these things that you're thinking about that are in your head that you're worried about for your fight, rationalizing them as opposed to trying to block them out or not think about them is the way to deal with those. I also wanted to point out that when I gave the rundown of doing my worksheet a few hours before I was supposed to be at the venue and then reading it again about an hour before I fought, this is not like the end-all be-all of the mental training I was doing. I was kind of like reminding myself and getting into kind of patterns and grooves that I've used in my own mental training, probably not in a super conscious way, but I wanted to make a point that in the same way that saying that you've done the right training, you've done the hard work, you know that you've done your running, you know that you've put in the work that's necessary for you to have a good fight. The work that I did in that day and the work that I did the day before in getting my mental training prepared for this fight, I then had confidence in having done that work to feel good while I was at the venue. So I was very, very nervous going into this fight. I was nervous when I got to the venue as well, and I started to feel a little bit calmer when I got to the venue because I was like, oh shit, I've been here before. Not this place, but like I've done this kind of thing before. I know these people, I know the cameraman. Like backstage at any show, whether it's like a huge, Lumpini Rajadamnern show or like the outskirts of town in a festival fight, backstage of a fight actually feels incredibly the same anywhere you go, regardless of how big or small that show or venue is. It's kind of amazing. And so that kind of calmed me and all these things. But being able to kind of ride the positive effects I was having from doing my mental training, I was able to do that. I was able to be okay with the fact that I was nervous, partially because I know that nerves are normal. I know that being nervous is actually good before a fight as long as that energy is not being kept in. That's partially my experience. I've had so much experience. I know that getting nervous is really just part of getting ready for a fight. But it's also work that I've done knowing that being nervous is not something to give great significance to. Being nervous is okay as long as you don't make it super significant. It doesn't mean anything that you're nervous. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you or that something bad's gonna happen because you're nervous. Why would I be nervous if nothing bad was gonna happen? It's not like that. Nervous is part of fighting. It's part of getting into a fight, and it honestly never goes away. I'm 283 in and I still get really nervous. But because of the mental training that I did and because of the actual work I do in my training all the time, I'm able to understand what that nervousness is and ride it and like be okay with it. So that's another part of the setting yourself up to be able to be in a good state leading all the way into your fight. For me, when I'm finally like getting up on the stage and getting into the ring, I get into a completely different like state than I'm able to ever get into even previous, 10 minutes previous to that, getting ready for a fight. It's just like it's not a switch kind of thing, but it is a transition that getting up on the stage is like, now it's just time to really go. And that kind of has to do with this last part I wanted to mention, which is that when I was sitting on deck, so this means that you're like in the chair at the side of the stage while the fight ahead of you is happening and you're waiting to go on, you kind of have to be ready to go in a number of different ways. You don't know that this fight is going to go all of its rounds. There might be a knockout and you have to go earlier than you thought was going to be and this kind of thing. So you kind of have to moderate your excitement and nervousness for an undetermined amount of time because you don't know how long you're going to be sitting there. And so I was going through a lot while I was sitting. I was calm. I was a little bit excited. I was nervous. I actually started feeling incredibly nauseous. Like I knew I wasn't going to throw up because for me personally, I get this very salty taste in my mouth and my mouth waters a lot when I'm actually going to throw up. So I wasn't worried that I was literally going to throw up, but I had this feeling I was very, very nauseous. And then the more I was sitting there and the more I was trying to kind of just like ride this. So I didn't want to make it go completely away because I didn't know how much longer I had to be sitting there. Like if they called my name, now you make that go away. But if I'm going to be sitting here for another 10 minutes, you don't want to be like, I'm ready to go now. It's like moderating where your excitement readiness is going to be. And a couple of times while I was sitting there, I actually started feeling really lightheaded. And it was to the point where I was like, if I stand up and get on that stage, I might actually pass out as I'm like walking onto the stage. And this sounds very extreme. I'm laughing about it now. This is actually not something that I've never experienced before. I have been lightheaded before getting into fights before. And I think it's just part of the nervousness. It's part of the adrenaline. It's part of the excitement. And so I basically was just kind of riding it and like doing very, very slow exhales, trying to like calm myself down. My heart wasn't racing, but it was pounding. And I just was trying to kind of like, let's just ride this, keep this at like at an idle until it's time to actually get up on the stage. And when I got up on the stage and walked out, I kind of was just more in the mode of the like, I'm now doing this thing, like the fight has really already started when I start doing my walkout. And when I came back to the corner after the first round, I again felt like I was going to throw up. I was actually gagging as I was like taking my mouthpiece out. But again, it's this thing where it's like, this is not important. Like if I throw up in my corner, that's kind of okay. Like that's not the part of this fight that I'm worried about or that I need to give great significance to. Instead, I was like, I just need to get through the things that I know will kind of get my heart rate down and kind of get me back into the mode that I can perform the way I want to perform. And that's a lot of breathing and kind of like calming things down and not getting too low, but not giving great significance to the excitement or nervousness or ways that I'm feeling, because those aren't important for what I need to do or what I'm able to do. They won't actually inhibit me from doing the thing that I need to do. They're just very annoying distractions, I guess is the way to say that. So those are the things that I wanted to add into this particular mental training video and what I experienced in this fight, because I think that they're things that lots of people experience, and if they haven't experienced it, they may eventually experience it. And it's just this kind of thing that's like, it is not necessarily normal in the sense that like, it doesn't mean anything, but it's not significant. You don't have to give significance to it. It doesn't mean something much bigger. You just need to kind of moderate it and kind of deal with it as you're dealing with things that actually are much more significant. And you need to give significance to the things that are important actually in that moment and not get distracted by the things that really will just kind of, you'll forget about within 20 seconds of actually getting back into the round. So that's the extra.